Where you been for the last couple of years?
I've been in the deep dark hole. Gets better.
The reason I went to get my degree originally was because I worked for Steve.
We're going to meet up with Steve Tuck, who's like a legendary botanist and grow expert.
Please tell us about Mr. Tuck.
Steve Tuck is a disabled veteran.
My name is Steve Tuck. I'm here today to talk about some proper storage and curing.
Steve Tuck is also an American expatriate, a former U.S. serviceman.
They're just looking for the highest numbers, and they're wrong. That doesn't hit their body chemistry right.
I was his personal assistant. He made me love science, and so I went to college and got my master's degree in biochemistry as well as molecular biology and molecular genetics. So one of the first things I noticed about Steve Tuck was he did things like wore a suit wherever he went, and he talked scientifically rather than like a pothead. And he referred to this as his snake suit. Snakes don't bite other snakes. Dress like a snake and talk like a snake, and the snakes won't bother you. And so that was when I started learning that I had to wear my hair short and dress nicely if I wanted people to listen to what I was going to say. I was trying to find the people in the movement that were more serious and more scientific and more legitimate. And so when I met Steve, and Mark made me take him around to a lot of growers and a lot of geneticists and botanists, people that did a lot of the same stuff he did, I noticed that not only was he able to talk to them on their own level, but he was talking about things that they had no idea even existed yet. He was seeing the future of the cannabis industry.
That's part of science. It takes that micrometers, it takes microfuges, it takes hoods. That's the lab. Without that, you're in somebody's basement.
One of the bigger problems early on was they would have names, and very rarely would that name be a consistent association with the strain. Steve actually started applying a lot of new genetics and techniques, purification, extraction methods, things like that. He helped stabilize the seeds. I believe he developed nearly 200 different experimental strains and stabilized maybe 30 others.
I've stabilized Trainwreck and brought it out of Humboldt County.
He actually created seeds that would create Trainwreck consistently. So that's one of the things he was famous for. One of the strains he developed from scratch was Harawana, and that one is still famous now.
I've developed a couple hundred strains, but my favorite one is called Harawana. I bred it for pain and nausea and PTSD.
He would design these for the people that were sick to help them with their ailments, but then at the same time, people that weren't sick would enjoy the unique cannabinoid profiles that he was developing. When 215 passed, there were people that were required to start pushing the law. In other words, start using what it said and producing cannabis for patients. Steve was one of these pioneers. He started growing on a large scale, applying horticulture techniques. He followed all the rules. He made sure everything was inspection proof.
I had a detective sitting out in front of my house doing stakeout. It was the funniest thing in the world. Was I called the police station and had them patch me through to him. I'm like, detective, if you want to come in out of the rain, come on in as long as you promise to behave yourself and I'll show you around.
He would invite city officials in and make sure that everything he was doing was up to code. He would use genetics that he developed, creating strains that were medically and economically efficient. He was trying to build something up that was developed around patients' needs, essentially. Steve Tuck was actually this very interesting story. He was a veteran who was injured during his military stay.
I'm an honorable discharge disabled veteran. I was hurt on duty.
Then further injured in a car accident.
I was in a wheelchair for 6 years. I learned what it felt like to be helpless.
He was pretty much to the point where his body wasn't working anymore.
I went through a year of my life when I couldn't leave my house. You know, if it hadn't have been for delivery, I'd have died.
Through the use of cannabis to mitigate his use of morphine, he was able to function on a daily basis without having to take so much morphine it was killing him.
Pain medicine doesn't work on me without cannabis.
Cannabis was the one thing that saved me from my liver crapping out.
Marijuana is the only thing that keeps me alive. Everything else makes me sick. I can't eat.
So eventually, He was able to function like a normal human being and got this great education because he found this new inspiration of helping sick people get better using cannabis.
What cured me was helping other people.
And the very interesting thing, when Steve Tuck first got here, he arrived with a box that contained 20,000 viable seeds of over about 60 different varieties. He sent them 20,000 seeds to our Canadian government research program.
I donated $1 million worth of seeds to Health Canada. That's when Health Canada wanted me to consult for them.
In 2001, he actually made a gift to Canada of a large quantity of marijuana seeds, which he had developed because he has degrees in botany and horticulture. And he brought them across the border from the United States with the cooperation of the Canadian government so Canada could start its medical marijuana program.
I always tell people that was the point at which I bought my soul back.
That was the first time I met Steve Tuck. The second time I met him was when he returned as one of the first American refugees running to Canada to try saving his own life. And that's a whole nother story.
Steve Tuck is an American expatriate, a former U.S. serviceman who's here who has severe spinal degeneration.
I wasn't afraid then at all of the law because I thought we were, real legit and real.
We had an incident. Peter McWilliams, Todd McCormick, and Rene Bourget had all been producing large amounts of medicinal cannabis under the rules of 215, of course.
I was told all my life, if you don't like the law, change it. And when we voted in 215, I thought that was the law.
But the government didn't like that they were being so open about it.
What I was doing at the time was growing for hundreds of people and giving it away for free.
Peter McWilliams and Todd McCormick were both medicinally necessary patients to where when they actually put Peter McWilliams in prison, he died. And this scared everyone. It made it so anyone who had medicinal necessity, they had a real concern that they would be locked in prison without their medicine.
So I freaked out and went to Canada as a refugee.
When they started threatening his freedom and saying they were going to lock him up without his medicine, he knew they were very serious, and he took this as a cue to leave to Canada.
He was told that he would be locked up without morphine or cannabis, and he has had 13 back surgeries as a result of his military accidents. And so he came up to Canada.
Steve came up here about 6 to 8 months ago because he basically had been hounded in the United States.
October of 2005 is when I was kidnapped from Canada.
Canada fought and finally succeeded in sending him back to the United States to be punished for the act that produced the seeds which they used to start their medical marijuana program. Now, this is the most outrageous act of betrayal that I could imagine a country doing.
I was in the hospital getting ready to get operated on, and I was kidnapped out of the hospital. I was in there with tubes in me and under sedation and everything, and woke up to cops, 8 of them standing there with guns on me.
They have locked him up without medication and let him go into full-blown morphine withdrawal and agony. And the other day I saw them take him out of an emergency room with a permanent catheter in the middle of a medical procedure and put in the backseat in handcuffs and driven to the U.S. border, where he was turned over to U.S. authorities.
I had tubes and everything on my body. They took it all out, put me in a truck, and took me to the border at 120 miles an hour with Richard, Cowan, and my friends chasing them with a court order. They put me in jail and tortured me.
Remember that he left the United States because he said that he was afraid of being locked up without morphine and without cannabis. And that is exactly what happened when he returned to the United States.
I had all these charges on me from all these years in Humboldt. After I got into America, they all subsequently were dropped. They got to keep all my stuff, all my money, and I had to go away from the medical cannabis movement for 4 years. I'm glad I didn't have to go to prison for the rest of my life or get killed there, but it really hurt my body a lot.
I produce cannabis for patients who can't produce it for themselves or who are dying. I have 16 steel plates and pins in my back from a military accident.
He has several steel pins in his spine. I've seen many of his x-rays.
This is one of the pins that had to be replaced right here. They want this to fail. They want people to do without their medicine. They've left a trail of bodies behind them, and they don't care how far it leads.
The worst is when you see these child cancer patients is the ones that get me. It just tears my heart out, you know, because it's like, man, everybody's gonna die, but when you see a little kid dying and you can do something about it, you're like, man, I'm gonna try something. You know, I'm not gonna just sit here and watch this little kid die, man. You can put me in jail, you can shoot me. After you know you're fixing people, or this is what's really cool, after people like his family see the good, they can hear all the lies in the world they want in the future, but they'll never go back to believing that's a bad thing.
Some cops just can't accept this because really, you know, like this one cop had told me, I threw my kid out for this, you know, and he started crying. And they have a hard time coming to deal with that, you know? I mean, how do you deal with 20 years of breaking people's lives and busting them in the head, and all of a sudden you're gonna say, well, that's a good thing. And it's really hard for certain, not even police officers, officials, lawyers, judges, state representatives, to just get their mind around this could be medicine, this could help people. And the boogeyman stories they've been told all these years is just that, you know, they're boogeyman stories.
Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell.
We got 5, 6 states now legal, 20 medical. Ain't nobody dead yet.
So we essentially need to retrain our officials now in how they behave around this stuff.
I think we all need to retrain ourselves in how we think about this stuff, how we think about all illegal intoxicants, how we deal with them as a society. The one thing that I don't see they won't see is that 25% in every state that's legalized for medical or recreational, that's the drop off on deaths from opiates. That's the #1 killer in America right now. Not only that, but it's pushing the cartels out. I mean, really, who in here is for the cartels? There's no denying what this does for people. There's no taking these soldiers who are alive right now and turning them back and saying, oh, you gotta die.
Both his experience as well as the scientific knowledge is something that can't be reproduced easily. And I think he needs to pass it on to as many people as possible.
It was my dream my whole life to see what's going on now in the world. Some crazy stuff going on. Legalization, Sessions, Trump, Willie, Woney, who's gonna squash what? Patients are scared to death everywhere.
We got as far as we did legality-wise on the backs of the sick.
If we just set this up for legalization for a few people at home, all you're really doing is legalizing it for rich white people. Patients, sick people, never will be able to pass these DUI limits.
People ain't got no business spending no money on no weed, and it's not about taking no market share from nobody.
There's been a lot of, I won't out and out call it victimization, but when you have a little kid who's having seizures and you're charging them $600 for a bottle of hemp sludge, I don't call it compassion either, you know?
So you essentially get the same effect as the drug war before it was legalized, only
Yeah.
now it's institutionalized enforcement.
Not only that, but you no longer have any defense.
In Colorado, for instance, the medicinal patients had availability to cannabis before it was legal for recreational use. This supply was completely depleted for use on the recreational market. Not only was there none available for the medicinal patients, but they were being forced to pay the full recreational price that everyone else was having to pay now. So where before they were being charged half that at the medical facilities.
It's time there is regulations. It's time that we quit letting beat cops make up the regulations on the street. Now's the time for this to happen. We went from 2010 to 2016 for this bullshit of waiting for the times right. We passed our law just because, you know, President Orange Monkey wants to play games. Don't mean that now the will of the people's gone. I think more people voted for weed in this last election than voted for any politicians. There's so much money at stake right now. I mean, we're projected right now by 2020 in California for cannabis to be a $20 billion industry. And that $20 billion will come pretty much from the pharmaceutical and some of the alcohol and the tobacco industry. And they all know it.
There's so many ways we need to learn about getting this in people and bringing on new products.
So the industry right now is blowing up all over.
Cannabis, it's probably going to reach a point to where it's nearly fully legitimate soon. And I don't think that most of the industry is ready to meet the needs of a legitimate industry.
I'm here today with Josh and Kendra. They're from Farm Squad, which is a local organization dedicated to getting medicine to patients.
I foresee within 4 or 5 years,
Cannabis being one of the prime medicines of the United States, especially in the poorer states.
We really got to keep in mind there's a huge difference between the medicinal class and the recreational class of user.
Do you ever lab test anything?
We do have our lab tested results. We do test our products. We test everything at our headquarters. We like to keep everything up to date so that way patients are calling in for the right products and they're not misinformed. We're very close to our patients. The moment they call in, I know exactly who they are most of the time. I know who you are every single time.
We have legalization. Now we need industry trade groups. We need standards, rules, shit everybody agrees on.
It's pretty easy to instigate standards in a recreational market. When you're developing products for, say, AIDS patients or cancer patients, if you develop a product that is infested with, say, mold, a person who has a compromised immune system could actually die from smoking something with that. And so if you're producing something for medical patients, you have to have some kind of guarantees in place that you're not going to make them sicker than they already are.
What they can't do is say, we can't have medicine, we can't have it here, you know, because there's a lot of elderly people here. And as you know, that's probably half y'all's business or more. For one, they have the dough to pay for it. For two, they don't want to troop all over town with a bag of weed in their car.
Right.
You know, and for three, they need shit explained to them. What you can do, you're great at. And I'll tell you what will surprise people the most is it'll be the older people who use these versus the younger people who go to brick and mortars.
There's a big difference, I feel like, between, you know, the patients who go to a dispensary and the patients who do come to us. We are able to service the patients who are uncomfortable with leaving their homes. I feel like a lot of the patients who come to us are actually for medical reasons. We have a patient, he actually just had undergone back surgery. He's the last person who would want to leave his house to go get the medicine that he would need.
If somebody's had 13 back surgeries, I know how they feel. He's not having fun right now.
We actually gave him a bunch of CBD samples, and it was his first time ever encountering CBD, and I told him, I was like, you're not gonna get that that medicated feeling like you're normally used to with THC. Don't expect that, but do expect for a lot of your pain to be relieved. And then he gave us a call at the end of the day after he tried a few gummies, and he said he dropped all his medicine and then he's converted to CBD gummies.
One of the biggest annoyances is to hear the comparison of alcohol and cannabis.
A lot of people think that cannabis is like alcohol. Nothing could be further from the truth.
When you're smoking cannabis or eating it, you're triggering one of the most ancient systems in your body, your endocannabinoid system. When you're drinking alcohol, all you're doing is interfering with the connectivity between your neurons.
You can habituate to cannabis. I used to go to school every day to college, and I made straight A's. Once you habituate to it, it doesn't affect you like that, whereas nobody can habituate to alcohol.
It's the difference between drinking poison and taking medicine. It's not even comparable.
I think the marijuana industry can become a major source of revenue for states in America and worldwide.
As cannabis becomes legitimate,
GWPH. This stock will be up the most of any stock other than Allergan today. Why? Because this is a cannabis stock.
I think a lot of the focus is moving towards making more effective products for delivering the amounts of cannabinoid profiles a person's desiring. So if it's for recreational use, of course, you're going to want products like vape pens, basically vaporizers in different forms and different heats that are in different sizes to make it both exquisite and efficient. We're moving towards smaller devices offering the same benefits that we used to get from having to do things like roll a joint and smoke the entire thing. So we really already are coming up with a rough outline of what is to come.
Dixie Elixirs and Edibles went from commercial kitchen to commercial manufacturing plant almost overnight.
Now all we have to do is make more exquisite versions of what we're already doing and make them so they're longer lasting and user friendly. The illegal market has been forced to create so many products on its own that now that we're going to a legitimate market, it leaves an entire world of development and potential for sales.
Last year, I've watched an explosion in the industry of new products.
Dixie Elixir is also a big seller.
Dixie Elixir drinks, tinctures, and cannabis-infused chocolate bars are sold in hundreds of pot shops around the country.
I'll say for the first time in 30 years am I seeing new products come on that got me excited.
We're not 10% into the potential of what this can do. Nobody realizes this is still in its infancy.
There's a few companies out there, like some of these peripheral companies like Weedmaps are actually doing a really good job at finding niche markets to where they can actually build industries from.
Do you do the Weedmaps menu?
I do, yeah. So we like to keep everything up to date. Anything that we do have on our menu, our drivers do have.
It's important to keep your Weedmaps updated because, I mean, people are going to want to know what they're getting or what they're ordering or what you have.
Another thing is pharmaceuticals. We essentially have the makings of real pharmaceutical research and medicine now. And this is where I think the cannabis industry is going to have to go if it's going to go beyond just being a recreational thing that people do on the weekend.
At a delivery service, it's a lot more personable.
Amazon will deliver right to your house, you know? That's the way I look at y'all. You're Amazon. There's people out there like me, like other people, who are so sick that we're always going to need this.
You could definitely reach out to us on our Weedmaps at Farm Squad, Irvine, all the way out to Mission Viejo coverage area to Dana Point, Laguna. Or you can contact us directly at 1-855-32-SQUAD.
This is a really serious subject. We're talking about saving people's lives. There's so much medical utility to this. There's still thousands of people out there right now that don't even realize we can help them.
I've seen the tip of the iceberg of how far this can go or the potential of it.